Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome to Eat the Rich. I immediately have a first question for you. Who is the richest person in the Netherlands? You can just shout out if you know. Sorry, what? Yeah, Heineken, Carvalho, Heineken, exactly. I think Charlene de Carvalho Heineken, I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. Do you also know how much money she has? 17 billion? Okay, maybe you... today it was only 13. Yeah, exactly. Maybe some different calculations. Yeah, 13 billion euros, that's her net worth at the moment. She earned 3 billion from her late father, Freddy Heineken, who was a long-time director of Heineken Company. And with that 3 billion, she made it into 13 today, 13 billion. And 13 billion, do you know how much that is? If you earn a modal income, how many years does it take you to earn 13 billion euros? 300,000 years. Yeah, and you can't spend it, of course, huh? You have to save it. So she's a billionaire. How many billionaires do you think we have in the Netherlands? 15 is a good guess. It's 12 at the moment. Or it was in, yeah, at the moment, yeah, 12. And so Charlene is a woman. How many women do you think are on the list? Just the one. It's only Charlene. Yes. And so 12 billionaires. How many millionaires do you think we momentarily have? 500? 400,000 I'm hearing. Other guesses? 3,000? At the moment it's 317,000 billionaires in the Netherlands. Millionaires, sorry, millionaires. And that is almost double the number of millionaires 10 years ago. So in 10 years' time, it increased by 180% the number of billionaires. Now, this is just...
Also the houses they own, or just the shares and the money?
Their net worth. So this includes, it depends a bit on how rich they are, but it includes their houses and all the company shares and all those kind of things. Yeah, the more money they own, usually the bigger part the company is.
Because there are a lot of millionaires because just of their own house.
Their house. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So that's just to give you a scale of the wealth, of maybe to say extreme wealth in the Netherlands. My name is Aafke. I am your host for this evening, and welcome to Eat the Rich. Yeah, maybe. Yes. So this is a critical mass session, and it's the first of its kind. So welcome, and thank you for being part of this experiment. The critical mass session is formerly known as het Filosofisch Café, organized by Studium Generale. And importantly, it's the same in an important respect. There's still some important expert speakers. There's still art in the room, but it's now in English and it's much more interactive. So I know that there went a lot of fun, energy and preparation into this evening. So I really want to thank you for being here tonight, and I look forward to experimenting with you. So the topic of today is extreme wealth, and it's called Eat the Rich. And this title comes from a citation that's attributed to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the 18th century French philosopher and writer. And he said, "When the poor have nothing else to eat, they will eat the rich." And this thing he supposedly said became very popular during the French Revolution, and today it's often used by anti-capitalist activists who want to claim that in order to address extreme wealth inequality, we should really limit extreme wealth. So to address wealth inequality, we should address extreme wealth. And today we're going to look at why extreme wealth is a problem for society. And we're going to explore ways forward. And this is going to be a fairly interactive evening. So after the speakers, you will also you'll be part of a role play game. And yeah, we'll see if we find some solutions. Maybe not, maybe we can. So before we go into that, I want to hear from you a little bit more. Who's in this room? So can you raise your hand if you consider yourself rich? All right, there's a lot of hands. Can someone maybe tell me why they feel rich? What makes them feel rich? Yeah, I have a microphone for you.
I could lose or give away €1,000 today and not have to do anything different.
Okay, yeah, so 1,000 more or less, you wouldn't feel it. Yeah? Okay, some nodding. Others say, yeah, then you must feel rich. Other experiences?
I could not lose €1,000 today, but on a global scale, I think I'm still considered very, very rich.
Right, you're probably top 1%. Yeah? Another interpretation?
I am able to study in one of the best universities in the world, I think I can say, and I'm even able to do a longer time for it and take my time with it, and I think that's pretty rich as well.
That feels like a luxury, let's say, yeah? That you can afford that. All right. Yeah, other interpretation of feeling rich that are relevant, yeah?
I don't have to worry about basic stuff, like a roof over my head, food. I can go on a holiday. I don't have to worry.
Yeah, you don't have to worry. You just have the basic needs covered. All right. Who does not feel rich? Yeah? Do you maybe want to share what gives you that feeling?
I feel like if I spend too much, my family will not be able to support my study here. So, yeah, that's why.
Yeah. If you spend too much, is that what you said? If it takes too long. If you spend too much, then your family won't be able to support you. Yeah. I also saw a hand on that table. Do you maybe want to share?
Oops. So I couple rich to the monetary value here. I do feel very enriched, but that's something else. But I wouldn't consider myself rich because, well, for most of my closest family, they wouldn't be able to help me in my studies, so I have to work for it myself, which takes a burden on you as well. So for Dutch measure, I wouldn't say I'm rich.
Yeah, the safety net just isn't there. Yeah. All right. Any other experiences of not feeling rich at the moment? All right. And who didn't raise their hand yet? There's, I think, a whole lot of group of people. Can you maybe share what made you doubt it, or maybe? I think. Yeah.
Okay to comment. Well, I was actually in doubt because initially I thought, well, I don't feel rich as such, you know, in the general way of speaking. But then again, you know, when everybody was commenting, I was thinking, okay, yeah, relatively speaking,
okay,
I'm quite rich. But I had a big income drop, so, you know, that's why my sense is that I'm not feeling rich.
Yeah, so by comparison, it's less.
Exactly, compared to what it used to be.
What it used to be. Yeah, all right, thanks for sharing. I think there was another hand I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, oh, I see.
From the girl here at the front.
If you don't want to share, that's fine.
Here with the striped trousers.
I feel like I'm comfortable in spending money for my family, but not for myself. So like it's I don't know, that kind of feeling like I'm willing to spend for my close
Yeah.
person, but not for me.
Yeah, so are you saying it's not your own money that you're spending?
It's my own money.
Okay.
But I feel like for my personal expenditure, like it's not that much, but I'm willing to give my money, my wealth for my family.
So are you saying you're a bit in doubt because maybe you are fairly rich, but your family isn't? Is that what you're saying? No.
Well, not really. It's just, sorry, I don't know how to explain it, but I don't think I'm that rich. But I think my money is more than enough to keep my family safe.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time with me to help me understand. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that gives a lovely impression of who we have here in the room. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. I think, is Savriël here somewhere? Yes. All right. So with that on the back of our minds, I would like to invite our first speaker for today. He used to work at the Worldwide Fund for Nature, but for him that wasn't idealistic enough. He left the NGO and he became a market philosopher and business ethicist. Yeah, market philosopher and business ethicist, who's currently finishing his PhD, and then he said himself about it, which is really unfortunate because it's the best job I ever had.
Yeah.
So, Savriël Dillingh.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you for coming, and thanks already for, how does this, yes. Thanks for sharing your stories, and welcome in at this very important night, which will discuss a very important topic, namely, should we eat the rich? We're going to discuss the problem of the rich. This is a very complex and difficult problem, and I only have about 20 minutes to talk to you about it. And in the course of my talk, I'm going to give you a crash course in political philosophy, also a crash course in basic macroeconomics. So I will be offending a lot of philosophers and economists because I only have 15 minutes, so I'm forced to make it superficial, cut corners. So I already apologize to any philosophers and economists in the room. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about, firstly, should we even eat the rich? Is this even a problem? Why are we talking about this? Secondly, we're going to talk about the public and the private. We tend to think of these things as, easily separable. Is that correct? This is the crash course in economics, by the way. The first one is the crash course in political philosophy. And finally, we'll be talking about the cutlery. How do we eat the rich? Which body parts do we eat first? All right. Let's start. So, why should we even care about the rich? Is there even a problem? Well, there's certainly a problem. I searched a long time for a graph that would display the enormity of this problem. It's actually very difficult to find. The graph you're looking at right now is about income inequality in the US. And you can see after the 80s, 70s, 80s, there's a huge divide between people that make a lot of money and the middle class, people that make less money. And what's interesting here is that the y-axis are percentages. And you have to realize that if you gain 60% off, I don't know, let's say $3,000 a month, 30%, that's a lot less than 180% of, say, 200,000 euros a month. So we're talking about percentages. I think this graph lies to you. So according to the World Bank, there are about 700 million people that they call the abject poor. That means that you live on $1.90 a day. 700 million people. So these are people that are probably somewhere here on this graph, right? And they gained maybe 1%, but 1% of $1.90 a day is not a lot of money. So remember the percentages. And then there's also a problem with this number, $1.90, because this means, and this is true, that the World Bank considers you no longer part of the abject poor if you make $1.91. a day, or $1.92. And Jason Hickel, a very famous economic anthropologist, I should say. I keep saying anthropological economist. No, it's the other way around. He estimates that it's probably about half of the world population. So that's 4 billion people living in something that we may legitimately call extremely poor. So there's certainly a problem here, right? But what is the problem? Because according to Ben Bernanke, who is a Nobel Prize-winning economist and also an ex-chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, he says, I don't care about equality, but I lose sleep over poverty. So why should we care about the rich when we can care about the poor, right? What's really the problem here? Now, if you say this to any progressively minded person, they might say, what are you talking about? Isn't it unfair or unjust that Elon Musk lives like this while 4 billion people live like that? And then the answer would be, but what's really the problem here, right? Is it that Elon Musk lives like this, or that this little girl has to live like this? And that's a good question, I think. So this is what political philosophers have been talking about for decades now. So what you can see here is everyone above the blue line is considered relatively rich, and everyone below the orange line is considered relatively to extremely to abjectly poor. You can see that's Elon Musk and Jeffrey Bezos from Amazon and Bill Gates, and that's me, because I am also relatively extremely rich. So is probably everyone in this room, right? We just talked about this. And everyone under the orange line is either very poor or extremely poor or abjectly poor. So philosophers have thought, what's the problem here? It's probably a problem of equality. What we need to do is we need to make sure that all of these people are pretty much on the same level, right? This perspective, by the way, is called egalitarianism, from the French word for equality, égalité, egalitarianism. But then a bunch of philosophers said, okay, but that also means that we can just, pull everyone from above the blue line across the orange line, and then, hey, equality, everyone's poor, right? And that's actually a very good counter-argument. So these philosophers thought, okay, so maybe it's not equality. That's the issue here. Maybe it's sufficiency. Maybe we just need to get everyone across the orange line, right? And once everyone's across the orange line, we're settled. We're great. Everyone's at least a little bit rich. But then the great counter-argument here is, but how do we differentiate then between this little girl here and one that's almost as close to the orange line as I am to the blue line, right? There's no way to differentiate. And then philosophers thought, that's actually also a very good argument. This, by the way, this perspective is called sufficientarianism. So then philosophers thought, okay, that's great. So maybe we have to talk about priority. Forget about blue lines, forget about orange lines. Maybe we need to just care more about this person than about this person, more about that person than about that person, etc., etc. But then the counter-argument is, but without these lines, how do we know how much to care about people, relatively speaking, right? So you have to realize that the majority of my discipline, political philosophy, is mired in this extremely stupid and extremely unproductive debate about, whether we're sufficientarians or prioritarians. The greatest minds of our generation are, working tirelessly to figure out which ism they're a part of. So recently, someone tried to intervene in this debate. She's called Ingrid Robijns. You might have heard of her. She's a world-famous political philosopher, and she's Dutch. She lives in Utrecht. She's also a professor there. And she tried to intervene in the debate by saying, okay, listen, we actually do have to talk about the rich, about the people above the blue line, because these people make it more difficult for us to solve the problem of poverty. And they do so by interfering in these democratic processes, by lobbying, threatening capital flight, stuff like that. And they also disproportionately use up the resources that we may actually use, may want to use to combat poverty. So as she says, in a world without poverty, we might not have to care about the rich, but we do not live in this world, right? So we do have to care about the rich. So we've come to our, this was the crash course political philosophy, we've come to our provisional answer. Should we eat the rich? What do you guys think? All right, but only insofar as they keep us from saving the poor, right? This is, I think, a very attractive view. And I think a lot of you will just get off the bus here and agree like, okay, tax evasion bad, private jets bad, lobbying bad. We should probably do something about that, but there's nothing intrinsically wrong with being rich, right? All right, so I want to spend the next couple of minutes trying to defend a more systematic approach. So no blue lines, no orange lines. We're going to take the system as a whole. We're going to look at that. And in doing so, I'm going to offer you the tool to look at this problem differently than political philosophers do, because we're going to talk about certain things afterwards, and you might think this is useful. But to do so, we're going to have to dive into economics. Okay, so we're talking about the public and the private. Does anyone know what this is? Honest question. Yeah. That's good, that's good. These are the two formulas, you guys, that rule our lives, especially in our Western liberal democratic market societies, right? These are the two fundamental welfare economics. This is the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics, and this is the second fundamental theorem of welfare economics. I'm going to explain them to you briefly. There's an assumption underlying these, and that's that we can improve welfare by satisfying people's preferences. So things people want, our desires, right? Things we want to consume or possess. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can say about that. I wish I had the time to, but I won't. Let's just assume that this is correct. So then the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics tells us that perfectly competitive markets satisfy preferences, so as many as things that people want as possible without dissatisfying other people's preferences. So that means that perfectly competitive markets make the most people possible well off without making others worse off. Do you guys know what this concept is called? Yes? It's efficiency, baby. This is what economists mean when they talk about efficiency. It's making the most people better off without making them worse off. That's the first theorem of welfare economics. The second fundamental theorem of welfare economics proves mathematically, as does the first, that this process works no matter which starting point people have. So imagine a society in which the government gives everyone, I don't know, $20,000 when they come of age, when they become 18. We drop a perfectly competitive market on there, and boom, most people well off without anyone else being worse off. Same happens in North Sudan, which is the poorest country in the world. We drop a perfectly competitive market on there, and boom, magic happens, right? Most people well off without anyone else being worse off. So what this means is that our economies supposedly generate win-win situations for everyone. And this is why people believe, lots of people believe, most people believe, that markets can literally save the world. And this is the stuff that Bill Gates keeps saying, right? We need to just more markets, and then at some point we can just lift everyone up and no one will be poor again, ever again, because we only have win-win situations. And an interesting ideological conclusion that most Western governments have drawn from this is that you have the market concerned with efficiency, and then you have the state that's concerned with equality. These things shouldn't interfere with each other, right? We should just let the market do their magic, and then have the government do some redistributive policies, some taxing left and right, so we can all have, equality of opportunity, and then, markets will figure this out for us. But what I want to convince you of today is that that's not a fact of science, right? That's a political opinion that we're pretending is a fact of science. So the idea is market efficiency, state equality, they're separate, there's no interference, there's the public, and then there's the private. Now, interestingly, this isn't actually always how it's been. John Maynard Keynes, I think you all know the name, very famous economist, looked at this entirely differently, right? There's public and private, but they're absolutely intermingled. And we should take them as a whole system and look at them together. But that's not how stuff is now. Now we're stuck in the idea that it's actually scientific to think that a rising tide raises all boats. This is something that John F. Kennedy said. We should just let the market do its job, make everyone better off. But then the question arises, do they say when this is going to happen? This is a prize-winning, very famous cartoon from 2014. Because it looks like the problem isn't actually, materializing, the promise, I should say. The rich keep getting richer. We have the data on this. And depending on what metric you use, the poor are, either staying pretty much on the same level or they're getting even poorer. So why is this? What's happening? Well, one way of looking at this, and this is the tool that I want to offer you, is this is beautiful mathematics, right? This is beautiful. And I've worked through the formulas myself, and it's just lovely. It's a lovely ideal situation, but it's not reality. In fact, what these theorems require is the satisfaction of several conditions, one of them being, I've written them down, I'll go through them quickly, is that, sorry, my text is super small. We have to have markets in every commodity. So that means we also have to have a market in like CO2, for instance, like the air that we breathe. We don't have that market, right? We also have to, our interactions have to have no negative effects on other people. These are called negative externalities. So things like climate change and things like pollution still happens, right? I'm just going to look back. It's bigger, yeah. Okay, another one is everyone knows the price of every good in every single market. So we're homo economicus, right? We know instantly the price of every good in every market, and we can calculate them together and relate them to each other. We know that that's not true. There are several of these conditions. The thing I want to convince you of, or at least tell you today, is that that means that in fact our economies do not generate win-win situations. And most economists, almost all economists, the smart ones at least, would agree with that. What we have in our economies are actually win-lose situations. So someone gains, and then someone else is taken from. And if we accept this, we might also start doubting this division of labor between market and state, right? Because the market is in fact not being very efficient for everyone. And it's actually interfering in the equality that the state is supposed to furnish for us. So, maybe Keynes was right, and maybe we're just better off seeing this whole thing as a single system. And we might have to rethink the relationship between the public and the private, because it turns out that Elon Musk lives like this because 4 billion people live like that. So in political philosophy terms, just to help you out with the cases, that means that everyone above the blue line is above the blue line because all these people under the orange line are under the orange line, and vice versa. So now we come to an answer. Should we eat the rich? What's the answer now, you think? Yeah? No? Fuck the system. Yes! We should eat the rich. And if we want to save the poor, we're probably going to have to. Now, briefly, I'll give you a few options on how to do this. I'll run through this because I don't have time anymore. But remember the two views that I offered you. So the first option is we ask nicely. We don't have to actually eat the rich. We raise taxes somehow. We strengthen unions somehow, like we had in the 50s, and then we hope it sticks this time for some magical reason. We can eat the shareholders, and we can do so by all of us becoming shareholders. Everyone gets government distributed stock bonds on their 18th birthday. All of us invest through these cooperative banks. Firms are turned into worker cooperatives. Coincidentally, I'm writing a book about this, which is why I'm offering you this solution. I think it's a good one. Another one, we build the new world on the shell of the old. So we accept that we can't do really anything about climate change anymore. We leave the rich alone. We develop a new system without them. We build solidarity networks. We grow food locally. We do stateless local democracies. This is kind of the anarchist solution, right? And it's looking progressively like this is the route that we're going to have to take. A couple of solutions. So to finish off, let me end with this quote by Sata Shakur. Nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. Keep this in mind when thinking about the solutions, because that means we might have to riot. Thanks.
I would like to ask our next and last speaker to come to the front. She has a very, I think, complementary story. She's been an expert on the financial world since 2010, when she, by accident, started to dive into this topic and then couldn't let it go ever since. She's been studying the financial world as an artist and challenging the ways that we attribute value and how we make these financial worlds work. Warm applause for Femke Herregraven.
Hi, everyone. It's for me a bit weird to be on the stage because normally my work, I make art. You can see it in museums. But as Afke said, around 12 years ago, I kind of by accident entered the financial world. I think before I worked 8 years as a butcher in the butchery, and then I went to art school. So I have something with eating as well, but let's see. I have to sometimes look a bit on my phone and back because I'm going to show you a lot of images. I want to take you, we have 10 minutes, in a sort of bird's flight through some different, you could say, actions and tactics that I use in my work to kind of understand what is this financial world. It's like a huge abstract thing. And I think in my work, it was always the question, what is it? How do I make it tangible? Where can I see it? Where can I touch it? What is it? So we go in 10 minutes through a few different strategies, and I'm gonna bombard you with some images. So just to show you, this is what my work normally looks like in museums. Just so you have an idea. But this is often how work starts. This is a screenshot of a trader screen where stocks are traded in 1/1000 of a second. This as well. I often look at long spreadsheets of data. This is the first part I want to talk about, mapping geographies of avoidance. This is what I called it. Like when I started 12 years ago, I just graduated as a graphic designer. And they asked me, do you want to do artist in residency in the financial district in Amsterdam? And I said, sure. I was kind of broke, so it seemed like an attractive thing. So this was my kind of spot. And the idea was that me as an artist, I would do something with the community. And I was like, the community, I'm between all these glass towers here. So I thought maybe that's an interesting entry point. I just started with a really naive question: who are my neighbors? So these were my direct neighbors. These as well. These as well, of course, as you know by now, these are mailbox companies. Here they didn't even make the effort anymore to come up with a name. But and I started investigating why are they in the Netherlands, and I saw that in the Netherlands, or outwards, we promote the Netherlands as through the supermodel Duitse Kroes and our fiscal policy. And so I thought, I'm going to make a list with all my neighbors. But the list actually became a book, which you can also look at here. So I indexed all my neighbors. It took me 3 months. Manually, I scraped all the addresses of the Chamber of Commerce register. So this was a way to try to understand who is my community. Just some images. Each page is one address. So sometimes you can see here's one company, one address, one number. Sometimes you have more than 3,500 companies on one address. That's a really big office. Then I started to, I was just graduated as a graphic designer, made this book. Why are these companies here? How does it work? And I realized they have all these what they call sandwiches. You know, you have the double Irish-Dutch sandwich, the Mauritian-Indian sandwich. These are all kind of tax avoidance structures. And I thought, I wish I could understand truly how it works. So I found out there's a database that tax lawyers use that have all the data of tax treaties between countries. I asked access. They gave me access for 2 hours. I scraped the whole database. Then I asked some tax lawyers to explain me how do they do it. And with their help, I made a game, an online game that everybody can play. This is the promo. There's no sound, but you can get the idea. Yes, so the game is called Taxodus, Tax and Exodus, obviously. By playing the game, every player would leave behind a report with the route that they internationally set up to avoid taxes. So by playing the game, we would, as a crowdsource, we will map all the routes that multinationals have available to escape tax, avoid tax. At the time, Tegenlicht, Dutch documentary series, came to me. They heard I was working on the game. They say, let's join forces. So they made a documentary about this, and we launched the game and the documentary on the same night. On the back end, when the documentary and the game were launched, I could see that people started to play the game from different countries in the world. And I also saw on Tuesdays, always the Belgian government somehow is playing. So it's an interesting little detail. Then soon after, in Parliament, questions were being asked, referring to the documentary and the game. And the Socialist Party started organizing what they call a tax-free tour in the Zuidas, in the financial district. So there we were in the bus on the tour with the book, trying to see if they had the same addresses as I did. I'm just showing you this example, how one question, who are my neighbors, can lead to a book, can lead to a game, can lead to this. Okay, when I launched the game, I started getting these responses like, oh, is this a mirror of the real world or the fiscal world? Or like, oh, I don't really like the game, the music I don't like, it's not really readable. I had tax lawyers and professors commenting on how they thought the game would be useful to show to students to think about the ethical side of it. But then I also had this guy, sorry, go one back. Hey, I randomly found your game. I started a new country. I think we're on the same page. So this was a complete libertarian, and the New York Times just published an article about it in the same month. He started his own country. And I thought, how does that work? Here between Croatia and Serbia, there's a piece of land that was claimed. And of course, this place was going to be a zone, tax-free, you know, 0 tax rate. So yeah, a really kind of good example of where this practice can go, I guess. I started becoming interested in how not only companies, but also individuals can, in a way, cut up their legal body and have their residence in one place, their company in another place, but also how citizenship was increasingly something that you can buy. So I made a little sister project called Liquid Citizenship that you can see there. It's a website that you can also still access. And basically on the website, you can explore what possibilities you have to purchase visas, passport worldwide if you're really wealthy, what possibilities there are if you're kind of mediocre income, but also if you live in one of the poorest nations in the world, what possibilities are there to escape a country through smuggling, and what even financial value is attached to that. So just some images, you can have a look at it later. It's also sometimes presented as a shop, very slick sort of shop, just going through it. Quickly to say, then I got approached by a few journalists in the Netherlands of the Trouw and Financieel Dagblad. They asked me, we have a project for you, but you first have to sign this non-disclosure agreement. I was like, I'm not going to do that. After a few weeks, they convinced me, and it turned out to be the Panama Papers. So I worked for a year as an artist with them on the Panama Papers. So just to say that sometimes you end up as an artist in crazy corners. Some images of that. Another important thing I think we should consider when talking about finance is that we are often given the idea that it's something very abstract and that it takes place elsewhere, but that is actually all around us, in the landscapes, in the people, the communities around us. So I started also to travel to these tax havens that were in all my schedules. And you see these little signs, like your logo on a van, that's one of the big 4 corporations that supports all this tax avoidance structure, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So here you can see you're in the right kind of neighborhood. Ernst & Young promoting bus stops. Also, when I was in Detroit for a project, I was also teaching there. It turned out that finance and this JP Morgan Chase bank in New York was actually much closer than we thought. As it turns out, while I was there, I was doing research, is that Goldman Sachs was caught up in a sort of scheme to store aluminum, sort of hidden in warehouses in Detroit. And by holding the aluminum in those warehouses, they were artificially driving up the prices and speculating on the market. So I signed up again as a researcher of the Metal Stock Exchange in London, and they gave me all this address with the warehouses. So I went to visit them and photograph them. Just show you some images of this. And then it's presented as a video with these aluminum blocks which have all the addresses of the warehouses engraved. A little bit back to this. We think that trading happens in the cloud, it's data that's abstracted somewhere else, but it has a very physical material backbone, which are these deep sea cables. So since 2012, I've been going to places to understand where's the infrastructure of financial markets. So I've been filming these shorelines, and this is where the big internet cables come on land, just to understand which landscapes are part of this trading network. So this is Russia, Mauritius, Indonesia. Here they just put a cable there. We can still see the scar from the digging. And then it's also important to remember that this infrastructure is not something new. This map, it's called the All Red Line. This red infrastructure is basically the infrastructure that the British Empire started to have eyes and ears in their colonies to speed up communication. And they were the first to experiment with telegraph line going in the sea. You can see it also on the post stamps. It was a new technology. They were very proud of it. Here we see newspapers from the 1980s. But as it turned out, just like our technologies now, it was really dependent on material. This at the time was the Gutaperka plant that only grew in the Malay Peninsula in Indonesia and Malaysia. And this is a rubber plantation, a Dutch rubber plantation on Java Island, where the rubber trees, the leaves are picked, they're melted into these rubber plates. These were shipped to London, where they were turned into the outside layer of the cables. I'm showing you this because I think it's important to remember that we think of finance as something high-tech, something new, but it has deep colonial roots. It's infrastructure that built over time. Okay, how much time do I have on my own? Okay, fair enough. Okay, I'll just, yeah, maybe this is a nice one too. I just want to say, yeah, okay, yeah, I will do this one. I was asked to do a project in the Museum van Loon here in Amsterdam. I was interested in this portrait of this old lady. Here on the left, Widow Borsky. At the time when I was there, the Borsky font opened by Maxima with Borsky there in the back. But what I found out is that she was actually someone that set up plantation banks in Louisiana. So she's celebrated as a Dutch female entrepreneur. But there is really a dark side to it as well. So in this whole project, I found a list with all the people that became property, all the enslaved people that became property of the bank when the plantation owners couldn't pay the mortgage anymore. So people becoming property of the bank, you know, how sick is that? And so what we did is that we created with a composer a choir with musicians and singers, and we went to the old Elswoud in Haarlem, which used to be the property of this lady. And we sang there all the names in a composition of all the people that once were owned by the bank. So I'm just showing here some things to think of how can we deal with the past that haunts us today. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, gaan we samen. Thank you. That brings us to the interactive part of this evening. Let me hear it. I want to hear from Lina. Was there any world in which Lina was better off at the end than at the beginning? Were there any Linas who were better off? Yeah?
Yes. So I'm not sure if I was better off, but there were very kind people around this table that offered me some room in their penthouses. So that did help a lot, but I do feel a bit desperate at the end because I'm just eating off of these people and I want to be able to stand on my own two legs, and I couldn't really get an education anywhere, so I don't really have any perspective like when their kindness turns, so yeah. I just hope it doesn't.
You have a room in a penthouse but really nothing else, and you remain dependent on others. Yeah? All right. Another Lina who did well?
Yeah, it was kind of similar. Like I could move in with Robin, who offered me a place to clean toilets or work.
And you were very happy with that, of course. Very thankful, very grateful.
I could also work on the farm, but in the end, there's no perspective. I'm stuck with the job, and maybe it will give me some shelter, but there's no way of getting out of the position.
All right, so it was better, but still very dependent and uncertain. All right, yeah.
So we had a revolution. I got to shoot some people, and then I probably likely died as well. But you know, I did get to take some people with me when I died, so I don't know.
So just to be clear, you were in the revolution, you killed some people, you ended up dying, but at least, yeah, some others died with you. Yeah? All right, all right. So that's actually good. So talking about revolution, I am now also curious about the billionaires in the room, the Alexanders. Which Alexanders were better off at the end? Yeah? Was it easy? What was your situation?
I was on a table that everybody was trying to help each other and didn't have to do anything.
Your important role was not to be at the forefront, just be in the back a little.
Yeah,
they will
just
manage
watching
themselves.
what they were doing. I was very satisfied, and now I think I'm going for presidency.
All right, thank you, Alexander. Any other Alexanders who want to comment what happened to them? Were you better off at the end?
I guess I will be better off at the end. We had a discussion about what I should do, having interest in global finance and technology. And I said, I don't mind increasing the taxes, because I would have my money elsewhere. But I'm prepared to invest in arms. We are
in
here.
What? In arms?
Yes.
We are right, very popular at the moment.
We are here at war. Russia is coming, so I'm doing a favor to invest in arms.
Yeah, so to be clear, you were on the scenario taxing the rich. You were taxing the rich.
I don't care.
And this didn't really affect you because your money was invested outside the country anyway?
He pays taxes, he said.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
It's unclear how you pay your taxes and if you have to pay any. But at least you saw an interesting deal to invest in arms because Russia was coming.
He saved the continent.
You saved the continent. You're a hero. Everybody got a job. You made everyone happy. All right. Very important Alexander at this table. All right, yeah. Warm applause for this one. All right, I don't know if we can consider Sophie a middle income, but I'm curious how Sophie did. She's a tech entrepreneur. What happened to her? Sorry, you?
I'm going on.
You're just going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have money.
Yeah.
And I can really explore my next company.
All right, so you're just gonna make a move, yeah? Go further up the ladder. Any other Sophies? What happened to you? Was it very different?
Okay. I'm Sophie, and my cases are catastrophe. I think most likely Sophie would also be invested in the catastrophe bonds. But since she has a conscience, she would like to use the income from the catastrophe to invest in sort of a humanitarian relief or humanitarian missions. So
all right.
Like one-off and one-off, like
a
balance.
tech entrepreneur with a conscience. That's nice. And another Sophie.
Yeah, just like final, similar to the first one. Like, I think Sophie is just an opportunist, like with money and chances. So she just moves, for example, with Alexander out of the country when the rich are taxed, build an empire somewhere else.
Right, just build an empire somewhere else. You have options, you have money. All right, so it seems that it wasn't necessarily the scenario that affected you differently, but it's how you interpreted the character, right? If more or less conscious, more opportunist, that's interesting. All right, can I hear from the people in the taxing the rich table? What dynamics ensued? What happened at your table? Yeah? How did you solve or adapt to the situation?
So the question was, so it was a war happening between Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine lost. And the question was, I'm just saying for the other people, right? I should do that, okay. And the question was, from your perspective, it is fair to tax the rich more? And the tax was about services like welfare, education, prison, and the military. But so the question was around the table, like, should we increase the tax? And the question was, for what? So, like, from my perspective as Tom, who is a marketing manager, who is very comfortable with his situation, but he has a lot of struggle inside of his mind, and he wants more like work-life balance. The question was like I was struggling about like my wealth issue and everything, but at the other hand, I was like, if I'm giving more money to the military, I don't know. So we had all this philosophic debates.
Okay,
actually.
that sounds good. So I think that your core concern at the table was that you maybe had different interest in what you wanted to invest in. Yeah?
Well, we were the rich people at the table, and we were saying that we would move abroad when you already had all of your money abroad, but I had invested.
You were just leaving the country.
We would be leaving the country in this scenario.
All right, and the other taxing the rich table. I don't know which one is taxing the rich also. Here, is that also what happened at your table? That the rich people just left? Yeah.
No, I think one of the rich people left. But Alexander left. But Alexander was generous actually to hire 2 of us along with him. But the real estate mogul, he couldn't leave because he had all his properties still stuck here. So he was trying to make some trade-offs, make some agreements to make sure he stays here and do stuff. So
yeah, he had his wealth stuck here, so he had to make other arrangements. Yes. Yeah. All right. I'm also interested in the catastrophe people. I think that's these 2 people, if I'm not mistaken. What happened at your table? What kind of dynamics happened? How did you address this catastrophe?
Well, I felt like we didn't fully understand how you make money of a cat bond. Because if the catastrophe happens and the insurance needs to pay the people that got hit, and also the people that got cat bonds, then what is the point of a cat bond? That kind of seemed
counterintuitive.
Yeah, counterintuitive. So I think it was a lot of technical discussion about that.
A lot of technical discussion, not so much philosophical on this table.
We all try to sort of blame the rich guy.
Yeah, you try to blame the rich guy. Is that a pattern that you recognize at your finger pointing at the rich guy? Is that also what happened at your tables? Yeah, no, actually not, I think. People are not recognizing it. What happened at your table?
Yeah, so actually at our table there was a lot of conscience speaking. So I was very sad, of course, as the poorest person. And most of the other semi-rich or rich people, they all offered me help and everything. But yeah, and especially the not so rich offered me help because they could identify with my situation. But then Alexander didn't really say anything. And at the end, we also came to the conclusion that we could kind of understand why, because what do you even do? Like, yes, you give the poor people a home, but then that doesn't relieve them of all of their struggles in their life. So there was more of a systematic issue, and we didn't have a government agent to shit on. So
yeah. So what in your table how happened was that people tried to offer help, but it was a very limited form of help. Is that something that you also saw at your tables? Can you nod if you recognize this? It was a table-specific dynamic. All right, it was a table-specific dynamic. Can we hear from the revolutionaries? Did you achieve what you aimed for with your revolution? Was the situation better at the end? Was there more wealth equality? I'm going to hear from them first, and then I'll come to you. Yeah?
Well, I'm Carlos, and I like to dream of the future. And this revolution was ideal for that. Also, the question was, do we want a violent revolution? And since I have 2 kids, I didn't really want that. So I asked, so what could we do to have a better future? And then all of a sudden, everybody joined in a real nice discussion. We even had some ideas about maybe get rid of money. And yeah, it was really nice, and talk about what
all sufficient needs to make the world good.
Make the world a better place.
Yeah, technically that would be possible.
At this table. Yeah, nice. All right, so a dreamer actually got the conversation rolling about how you would want to live. Yeah? That's nice. All right. And from your table, from your end, what happened?
Not at this table. The rich people were either hiding in their bunkers or fleeing the country. And the 7 people who could organize a revolution were rather thinking of their own benefits or how to deal with it rather than to try to make the world a better place.
We should go to the farm of Marie.
You go to the, sorry?
Yeah.
To the farm of Marie. It's a safe haven for everyone, yeah? So it sounds like at this table, the revolution made a very individualist society where everyone just goes for their own benefit. Yeah? Is that something you recognize at your tables? Oh, also a table-specific dynamic. All right. Can I hear from the speakers for today? Savriël, I don't know where you are. Yeah. How did these scenarios play out? Did you expect it?
Well, I mean, the table that I was at, the revolution table, I think was very nice because people really started considering what would an ideal society look like. And I think that's really nice. And for the rest, what I heard today, I think most of us underestimate how much the billionaires need us. I think after a catastrophe or a revolution, inflation, would happen and money wouldn't be worth that much. So the bunker situation, I think, is probably over-exaggerated. And then finally, what I want to say about the way people would probably act in these situations, I think human beings are lovers first and foremost. And you can see this in history, in catastrophes, in crises. People tend to, first of all, help each other, right? And I think we're meant to dance and love each other and drink all night and talk all night. And I think that's really something that happens after a crisis. And I think we can be optimistic about that. I think we can expect solidarity from each other.
All right, so it's not all misery. And then, Femke, which of these scenarios, if any, do you consider most impactful for challenging the wealth inequality in the Netherlands?
I don't want it to be, but I would think environmental collapse.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We had that one actually, and I noticed we were all kind of trying to help each other, like the first relief, but we couldn't think any more long term somehow. And maybe that's also a way of trying to reimagine, to reimagine other frameworks somehow. Because the moment we start to talk about climate change, everybody's paralyzed.
Yeah.
But the moment that it already takes place, it's a moment where maybe a new imagination.
Yes, and we will just be doing things. Yeah, you're just kind of forced to do something, and that's when it turns out humans are lovers.
Maybe I can say something nice that the artist is saying, but I always like the origin of the word catastrophe. It comes from Greek theater, where it meant a twist in the story, a turnaround, but it was not necessarily a negative one. It was not a disaster one. So this twist in the story, this turnaround. A twist in the story.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we should rethink catastrophes as just a twist, just another twist in the story. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I just want to point out that the next, that was this. It says more info here. I think you probably know when it is. There is a next critical mass session in December.
Is it? Yeah, it's on. Well, there's a QR code. You can scan it for more information.
It's the 9th of December?
Yes. It's the next critical mass session. So it's a session like this one. Not exactly the same, different topic as well. We're going to talk about living together and sharing together.
And it will be similarly interactive.
Yes.
So thank you so much for your wonderful conversations, your wonderful sharing. I saw some really interesting connections forming here. So thank you so much for being here, and maybe we see you at the next one.